My fusion system, fusing 1,000 chickens at the start. Chapter 311, straight to the 100th floor. Look. What's that? Everyone looked up as they endured the tremors. Some of them noticed the giant creature rising from the sky in the distance and cried out in surprise. They saw a vast mountain floating in the sky in the distance. However, that mountain was square. There were countless empty holes and rock tunnels that rotated constantly. Many adventurers were fighting with magical beasts at the tunnels on each level. They should have been underground, but they were suddenly in the air. All of them screamed in panic. The whole hill was like a giant Rubik's Cube that was magnified countless times. Even those who had not entered it knew what it was. It's the underground city. Nightingale stared at the distant sky and sighed. She knew that Watson would do such a thing because she had been with him for more than 2 years. She knew the young man well. Watson was a person who sought convenience. For him, things that could be moved should not take much effort to go in and explore. Just like how he was afraid of trouble, and so he fused all the major cities and towns along the border. He could fuse the entire border, let alone a small underground city maze. Absolute gravity. Watson spat our 4 words as he released his right hand into the sky. That was the diamond tier rule that he had obtained from fusing many earth elemental platinum tier spells like black holes when he was at Mount Creation. It could eliminate the gravity of certain things and give them a gravity that was hundreds of times stronger. At that moment, he had used the rules to eliminate gravity. That was only one of the dozens of rules that he had fused through thousands of spells. It was easy for him to do it, but it would look terrifying to everyone else. That kid pulled the underground city ruins out of the ground. How did he do it? A member of the Holy Sword Adventurer team looked at the sky with a blank expression. What kind of tier is he to be able to do that? A platinum tier. Another member of the Holy Sword Adventurer team fell silent. Even though it was a question, he already had an answer in his heart. At the very least, Lady Sword Mistress could not do it. Otherwise, she would have pulled the buried city out of the maze long ago. That also meant that Watson was stronger than Christina, perhaps at the peak of the platinum tier. Even though Watson looked to be only 12 or 13 years old, a platinum tier elite at that age was enough to enter the historical records. He would become the youngest platinum tier elite in history, breaking the current Sword Saints record. Quite a number of people thought that Watson had participated in the exploration with the Holy Sword Adventurer team to curry favor with them. It seemed that Watson's true goal was to hide his identity because his strength was simply too strong. Is that young Master Watson's true strength? The 3 of them looked up at the underground city above them, their expressions filled with emotion. They recalled the first time they had met Watson. At that time, Watson had killed a gold tier magical beast with a single move. They thought that was Watson's full strength. Finally, Watson had fought with the Sword Mistress, helped them fuse their weapons, and even gave them new weapons. What Watson had done was getting more and more ridiculous. No one knew if that would be the last time. That day was destined to be an unforgettable day for everyone in the City of Steel. Everyone looked up at the huge ruins above them as though they were looking at some sort of miracle. We can now explore the ruins out in the open. But before that, we should first clear out any irrelevant people and magical beasts in the ruins, Watson muttered softly. He did not drag the ruins out to show off his strength. After all, the ruins had 100 floors and were buried underground. He would have to go thousands of meters deep to reach the bottom, unlike the maze above his head, which made it much easier to enter. The bottom floor, which was as smooth as a mirror, was different from the other parts of the maze. The passage on that floor did not move and was shrouded in fog. He did not know what was inside. After he observed it for a while, Watson activated the system fusion on the maze above his head. He had only fused the magical beasts. Congratulations, Master, on fusing a large number of magical beasts. You have obtained a diamond tier magical beast, the Death Star Dragon. Following the sound of the system notification, the shadows of various magical beasts on the ruins' 100th floor vanished, transforming into streaks of flowing light that fused in the air. The adventurers fighting with the magical beasts suddenly realized that all the beasts had disappeared. Meanwhile, the magical beasts that were fighting for their territory also collided with each other. There were more than 1,000,000 magical beasts in the entire maze, and at that very moment, all of them had been fused. It was a terrifying phenomenon. A dark cloud appeared in the sky, it blocked the sunlight and dimmed the land. There was a faint flash of lightning in the cloud, illuminating the shadow of a huge dragon-shaped creature. Then, the dark cloud tore apart, and a giant black dragon rushed out. Its scales were jet black and shiny. Its ferocious head did not have the meandering ordinary dragon horns. Instead, it had a single horn, and 4 tiny black stars were floating around it. Diamond Tier Magical Beast, the Death Star Dragon. Attribute, Darkness. Ability, can master most of the dark elemental spells below Diamond Tier. Additional abilities, Eternal Night, causes a part of the world to sink into darkness. Dark Servant, the soul that dies in the eternal night will belong to the Death Star Dragon, and Law of Darkness, the body will be immune to all attacks in the eternal night. Additional abilities, Super Magic Immunity, Complete Physical Resistance, Draconic Magic, Zoom, Camouflage, Draconic Might, Death Star Arrival. This is the manifestation of the Law of Darkness. Consuming a Death Star above one's head will give someone an instant death effect, but can only be cast 4 times a day. Not bad. I actually fused a dragon. When he saw the information of the fused magical beast, Watson's face was full of joy. That was the second dragon he had fused, and it was a Diamond Tier 1. I wonder which is stronger, this dragon or Golden Flash. The entire city of Steel shook the moment that Black Dragon appeared. There are so many powerful magical beasts in the underground city. It's no surprise that no one but the current Sword Saint could get to the 100th floor. But where have the other magical beasts in the ruins gone to? Did that Black Dragon swallow them? The people of the City of Steel did not know that Watson had mastered the art of fusion. They thought that a black dragon from the underground city had swallowed the other magical beasts. Even Christina thought so, and she had gone down to the 70th floor. That black dragon must be a monster from the 100th floor. Has my father defeated it before? Christina muttered softly as she stared at the black dragon in the sky. She vaguely felt that something was amiss. That black dragon's aura seemed too powerful, and it terrified her. She wondered if she would have the courage to attack it. She did not know how her father did it. Swoosh! She heard a soft sound just as she was thinking about that. Watson had already floated in the air and cast a large-scale, long-distance teleportation spell to move all the adventurers in ruins. Then, he went straight to the ruins' lowest level. The adventurers who had fallen back to the ground looked as if they were in a dream. They did not know what had happened. When they saw Christina, they hurriedly went to her. "Thank you, Lady Swordmistress. It was you who had saved us, right? That black dragon was too terrifying. Just its aura alone made us wet our pants." The Swordmistress was the strongest person there. They thought that it must have been her who had saved them. However, Christina did not say anything. The people around her did not respond either. So, the tens of thousands of adventurers who had landed there were puzzled. They followed the other people's gazes and looked up. They were frozen on the spot when they saw the sight that greeted them. They were shocked. They saw a small figure soaring toward the sky. He stepped on the giant black dragon. At the same time, the young man extended his fist over his head and punched forward. He managed to pierce a hole in the ruins' 100th floor. Chapter 312, Trial on the 100th floor. He smashed through the underground city with one punch. Who is that young man? Did he cause the changes in the underground city? The group of adventurers, who had just been teleported to the ground level, exclaimed as they looked at the scene in the sky. Watson has already entered the 100th floor. Let's go there. Christina ignored the other people around them, she ordered the Holy Sword Adventurer team members. Even though she did not become Watson's partner, it was no longer important. Her long-cherished wish was about to come true. It was up to her and Watson to clear the 100th floor first. Yes, Lady Sword Mistress, the 200 Holy Sword team members answered her respectfully. Then, some of them spread their combat aura wings, and the rest waved their magic wands to release some flying spells. One by one, they soared into the sky, with Christina in the middle. Let's go as well. Nightingale was worried. She stepped forward and flashed to a height of hundreds of meters. The three others looked at each other, their eyes were firm as they followed Nightingale. In just a few minutes, many people had floated toward the sky above the City of Steel. It was not only members from the Holy Sword Adventurer team but also other adventurers in the city. After all, they only had one chance to enter the underground city's 100th floor. It would be nice to see it even if they knew they could not clear it. At that moment, Watson, who had broken through the bottom of the 100th floor, had entered the passage. There was a long tunnel made of some mysterious silver metal in front of him. He could even see his reflection on the wall and some colorful crystals around the tunnel. Those crystals seemed to have a high concentration of energy. The 100th floor is strange, indeed. The energy density here is dozens of times less than the outside world. If I can train here, a day is equivalent to more than a month outside. Watson looked around him before he began to move deeper into the tunnel. After about a few hundred meters, the tunnel disappeared. Watson arrived at a vast underground palace. There were similar tunnels in all directions. It was apparent that no matter which direction one went, they would eventually reach the same place. The structure of the palace was similar to the tunnel. It was also made of silver metal. The ground was so smooth that it could reflect a person's shadow. An altar stood in the center of the palace, and a 10-meter-tall mirror was on top of the altar. The mirror's surface was surrounded by swirling mist. It looked like a door to another world. Diamond Tier Special Item, World Transformation Mirror. The mirror can reflect everything that exists in the world and perfectly duplicate its clone, reducing the effect of the abilities above the Diamond Tier. Additional effect, teleportation without distance. After entering the mirror, one can travel to any location in the world. It is no wonder that the Sword Saint was the only person to have passed the 100th level in hundreds of years. It turns out that the final test is to defeat oneself. Watson sighed as he looked at the information that appeared before his eyes. How could an existence like him, who had the same skills and thoughts, defeat him? That had nothing to do with strength. At that moment, he understood the reason why his master had asked him to go there. That was a really good trial. Are you ready for the final trial? If you are ready, go to the altar and touch that mirror. It will let you face your true self. Regardless of whether you are despicable, timid, or weak, only those who could defeat themselves would receive the final reward. While Watson was thinking, his image suddenly appeared in the mirror, magnified countless times. He said in a dignified voice, "Do you even need to ask?" "Of course, I'm ready." He took a step forward and spread the angel wings on his back. He flew in front of the mirror in less than a second and reached out to touch the mirror. Swoosh! The spinning vortex on the mirror accelerated with a faint sound. It turned Watson into a stream of light and absorbed him. Watson felt his environment changed. It was as if the world was spinning. First, it was the temperature. A scorching heat came from under his feet, and the air was filled with the smell of sulfur. Watson turned around and found himself at the mouth of a volcano. There was boiling lava below him. Another identical Watson stood 100 meters away from him on the ring-shaped mountain. Whether it was his expression or his clothes, there was no difference at all. Where is this? This is the boundary of the world, a chaotic and disorderly land. The climate here can change at any time. Not only do you have to defeat yourself, but you also have to be careful of the magical storm that will appear at any time. Brave challenger, it's not too late to regret now, because once the trial starts, it won't end. You might even die. The majestic voice that he had heard came from the other Watson's mouth. Cut the crap. Let's begin. The trial begins. Accompanied by the loud heavenly voice, the other Watson suddenly spread his 6 angel wings and rushed toward him. He raised his hand and cast a peak platinum tier spell. Vermilion Nova. The Vermilion Nova spell was Sylvan's signature spell. Its power was comparable to a small sun, especially since the environment there was a volcanic crater. The fire element was dense, and after Watson's clone cast the Vermilion Nova spell, a fiery red sun suddenly appeared in the sky, illuminating the gloomy sky. The churning magma under the volcano sent waves hundreds of meters high toward Watson. The clone had made perfect use of the weather, increasing the spell's power by at least 50%. Fast attack, clear thinking. As expected of me. Watson felt intense pressure from the attack, but he did not panic. Instead, he praised the gods because the clone in front of him was exactly like him. To praise the other party was to glorify himself. He did not stay idle as he spoke. He waved his hand gently at the flame that appeared in front of him. Absolute gravity. The Vermilion Nova above his head had lost the restraint of gravity and flew out into outer space. The enormous waves of flames flying up from the crater were subjected to hundreds of times more gravity. They fell back down abruptly and were compressed into a concave plane. Boom! Just as he dissolved the clone's attack, a crack suddenly appeared on the ground beneath Watson's feet. A distorted gravity had attached to his body, causing him to bend his waist and sink with the rock beneath his feet. That is absolute gravity. Watson raised his head with difficulty and looked at the clone that had already arrived in front of him. It was apparent that the clone had grasped the same rules. We have the same magic and even use the same rule abilities. The effect of this world transformation mirror is really strong. Watson stomped his feet as he mocked his clone. Absolute dodge. That was a rule that he had fused with wind elemental magic. That rule allowed him to be like the wind. He could see and feel but not touch. It would cause a powerful gravitational force to slide down his body. It blasted a hole hundreds of meters deep into the ground beneath his feet. Absolute seal. The clone responded to the rule that he had fused when he was fighting Elvira. The powerful rule would suck all the air and magic elements around him. The flowing wind could avoid all the damages. The prerequisite was that it had to flow. It looks like this battle will be more intense than I imagined. Watson teleported into the distant sky via the same absolute seal spell to dissolve the power around him. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He had experienced countless powerful enemies and defeated each of them ever since he had transmigrated to that world. However, he had no confidence in that particular battle. That was the first time he had a strong desire to defeat his opponent. Chapter 313, Their Respective Battles. That is the trial on the 100th floor, just like Father said. Christina stood in a palace above the clouds. It was as if the gods had built it. The pillars supporting the sky were hundreds of meters high. In front of her was a flight of stairs that led to an unknown place. Each flight of stairs was several meters high. She had followed Watson to the underground city's 100th floor. She touched the world transformation mirror in the middle of the palace and entered that place. She knew some things about the trial's final floor from her father, so she did not panic. The last level would clone the challenger and choose the environment based on their personal conditions. The world transformation mirror would usually select a place the person would be most uncomfortable. For example, if a person were afraid of water, then the world transformation mirror would select a place by the water. If that person were fearful of some animal, the world transformation mirror would fill the scene with that kind of creature. As the 100th level of the maze's trial, the challenger must defeat themselves and overcome their internal weakness. That was the trial's challenge. What is my weakness? Christina asked herself. It must be her pride. Due to the enormous pressure caused by excessive confidence, the setting where she found herself was like a stairway that kept ascending like a temple. Lady Christina, where is this? Everyone says that there are countless treasures piled up in the underground city, but I only saw a mirror inside. I am very disappointed. I didn't expect that the mirror was a door that led to other places. This is the real 100th level of the maze. Look at how majestic that temple is, there must be a lot of treasures inside. While Christina was thinking, a faint sound of conversation could be heard behind her. It was the 200 elite members who had followed her into the world transformation mirror. Christina turned her head and glared at her subordinates. Her stare was unflinching. The world transformation mirror possessed a unique characteristic. When two people touched the mirror simultaneously, they would be transported to the same location. That was also the trick her father had revealed to her. She would feel pressured if she had to do it by herself, but she would not have to worry so much about it if she had other people with her. By the way, didn't Master Antonio's disciple get here first before us? Where's he? Is he at a higher level? Then we have to hurry up. Don't let him get the treasure first. You don't have to worry about that. The trial on the 100th floor is divided according to the time whoever touched it. Since he touched the mirror before us, he would be teleported to another place in the world, Christina explained. Oh, I see. Lady Sword Mistress, let's hurry up and start exploring. It's so high up, it might take us days to climb the staircase. Some of the adventurer team members could not wait to hurry up. Christina did not say anything. She just looked at the top of the staircase silently. Suddenly, she saw a fluctuation in the clouds before a woman walked out of them. Her long yellow and long robe fluttered in the wind. A long sword hung at her waist. It was particularly eye-catching, and she had an aura that could cut through the sky. After the woman emerged, the mist behind her fluttered again before another 200 people appeared, the same number of people Christina had brought with her. What's going on? Why is there another Lady Sword Mistress? A member of the adventurer team stared into the distance, then looked at the Lady Sword Mistress in front of him and rubbed his eyes. It's not just Lady Sword Mistress. I can see myself. What kind of magic is this? Or are we hallucinating? Another member asked in surprise. Everyone, pick up your weapons and get ready for battle. Those aren't phantoms, but clones created by the world transformation mirror based on each of us. We might get killed by them if we aren't careful. Christina commanded her subordinates, who were a little lax. Then, she drew the weapon from her waist and assumed a combat stance. They would need a team effort instead of an individual battle to pass the 100th level. Christina knew that she was not as good as her father or Watson, but she was good at her job as a commander. Let's have a showdown. It's so cold. Where is this place? Annie hugged her shoulders. Even though she had become a gold-tier mage, she still felt traces of coldness invading her body. Fortunately, the inextinguishable holy fire leather armor on her body could help her to eliminate the cold. That is the border, where the Dragonspine Snow Mountain used to be. Nightingale stood on a snowfield, she looked somewhat absent-minded. She did not expect to be teleported to that place after entering the 100th floor of the maze. She raised her head and looked into the distance, she could see a majestic and endless mountain peak. That was where Mount Creation was located. This is the border? Really? How come I've never heard of such a huge mountain peak at the border? That peak is surrounded by something green. Is that a tree? Clyde and Arthur also saw Mount Creation, they seemed skeptical. The scene in front of them was a little too shocking for them. That mountain is called Mount Creation. Young Master Watson created it. I'll explain it to you when I have the chance. The most important thing right now is to eliminate the enemy in front of us. She could see their clones approaching the exact location from the far north. They also heard wolf howls throughout the area when the clones emerged. Roar! Silvermoon demonic wolves emerged from the snow, revealing their huge bodies. A 100-meter-long moon-eating sky wolf led the pack. It had wise eyes, but one of its ears was missing. Nightingale's eyes twitched when faced with her clone and those Silver Moon demonic wolves. Those Silver Moon demonic wolves, particularly the leading moon-eating sky wolf, were identical to those Watson had killed in the Dragonspine Snow Mountain. She had not killed the moon-eating sky wolf to avenge her parents. Perhaps it was God's will, she would once again face the old enemy that had troubled her for more than a decade. Meanwhile, at Watson's location, dark clouds suddenly covered the already gloomy sky. Fist-sized hailstones fell along with silvery white lightning snakes. It filled the air with white fog. The magma under the crater had frozen into a layer of frost, and the rolling black fog rose. It was just as the World Transformation Mirror had described. That was the world's border. The weather was unpredictable. A moment ago, the air was filled with a scorching aura, and then, dense water elements had replaced the high temperature. The fight between Watson and the clone had shifted from a battle of laws to combat of water elemental spells. Peak Platinum Tier Spell, Absolute Zero. Peak Platinum Tier Spell, Silver Moon of Endless Reincarnation. Platinum Tier Spell. The sky erupted with silver-white moons with endless attractive forces. Wherever the moonlight shone, it would condense into solid ice. The ground seemed to have returned to the Ice Age, and long corridors of ice hung in the sky. If someone were lucky enough to watch from the sidelines, he would undoubtedly be taken aback and stunned by the scenario unfolding in front of him. As expected of my clone, what a troublesome opponent. Watson stood at the end of a long ice tunnel and performed a runic incantation. With one hand, he cast Absolute Zero, and with the other, the Silver Moon of Endless Reincarnation. His adversary had used the same spells. Hundreds of ice passageways more than 10 meters wide collided in the air, hurling ice fragments into the air. Watson had been engaged in combat with his clone for the better part of half an hour. At first, he could only match his clone's skills, but he eventually gained the upper hand. After all, he had trained on Mount Creation with Antonio and Sylvan. As long as he continued to outperform himself and gain new insights throughout the conflict, the clone would not be able to keep up with him. Watson gained more insights in that half an hour than he did in the 2 years he spent on Mount Creation. Just as he was about to win the challenge, the clone switched to a different battle style. No matter what magic he used, the clone would always do the same action, completely cancelling it out and bringing the duel back to a stalemate. Chapter 314, The Final Challenge. Lady Sword Mistress, we're going to win. The 200 members of the Holy Sword Adventurer team and the clone army were engaged in a chaotic conflict on the battlefield where Christina was. The Holy Sword Adventurer team was winning. Only a few dozen members sustained injuries, but more than half of the cloned army had been destroyed. The ground was splattered with blood, and shattered weapons and armor were strewn everywhere. They were unmistakably clones, yet they had looked so real when they died. We haven't won until we've destroyed all the enemies. Everyone, don't let down your guard. Christina stood in front of everyone and calmly directed her subordinates to create a 3 or 4 person team. They sliced into the enemy's formation like sharp blades, ripping it apart progressively. Her cheeks were flushed with joy. Her most trusted commanding ability had not failed her. She frequently read the Holy Dragon Kingdom's military techniques. She knew that her ability to lead troops in combat was actually superior to her strength. However, she had been born into the Sword Saint family, so she was forced to hide that talent. The Sword Saints were the peak of warrior cultivators. A single guy could face thousands of soldiers with that title, and any help was frowned upon. Christina had been imbued with a similar mentality since she was a child, as she was part of the Sword Saint family. However, she had chosen to reveal her true nature at that moment to win the trial. Swish! She slashed the sky and slew a few clones that had come to ambush her with a wave of her hand. Then, she said, change the goose formation to a circular one and encircle the adversaries in the center to prevent them from breaking through. Team 2, employ the snake formation to cause havoc with the enemy's formation. The Holy Sword Adventuring team members felt as if they had defeated their inner demons when the clones died. Each of them got more courageous as they fought. Meanwhile, the enemies were gradually falling apart, and it was difficult for them to fight back. Due to the difference in numbers and Christina's exquisite command, almost all the clones had died in just a few minutes. Only Christina's doppelganger, who was standing in the middle, was the only one left. So, that's the general. The Holy Sword adventurer team surrounded the clone after a fierce battle. Christina approached the clone alone and raised the sky-severing blade into the air, ready to strike at her clone. That trial would be hers if she could cut off the clone's head. She had been planning that move for years. However, she felt a little sorry for Watson as he was the one who had dug the buried city, allowing her to lead her subordinates into the trial effortlessly. Simultaneously, the team battle method she employed was also more convenient than solitary battles. However, she felt a sense of embarrassment in her heart. That had no bearing on her decision to accept the honor of being the first to clear the trial. Christina's gaze fixed on that thought as she cut her clone with the sky-severing blade. Crack! Christina widened her eyes as she glanced at the broken blade. Her clone snatched the sky-severing blade from her grasp. The sword had broken into halves with a faint snap. That scene was identical to what Watson had done at the St. Cathedral. However, the sky-severing blade in her hand had changed. The sword became even stronger once Watson had mended it, and her opponent was not Watson. What on earth is going on? She twitched her lips and took 2 awkward steps backward. She felt that something was not right. According to her father, as long as she defeated her clone, she would pass the trial. She had already won, so why did the clone in front of her continue to resist? Are you surprised, Miss Christina? The clone that had broken the sky-severing blade revealed a different expression than Christina's as she lazily stretched her arms. You are a brave challenger, I have to praise you for being able to defeat yourself. After all, it may sound simple, but there has been only one person to do it in a few hundred years. You are slightly inferior to him, but you cleared this level. If that's the case, why? Christina asked, realizing that the world transformation mirror was speaking to her. She was curious as to why she was unable to complete the level. Without waiting for her to finish, the clone said, that was the requirement a few decades ago, but times have changed. Because of that person, the number of people who came to challenge the maze has increased significantly. I've also learned a lot when I saw them use powerful magic or exquisite coordination to fight against magical beasts. As a result, the standard for completing the maze has changed. You must defeat yourself and me. If you can't do it, please do not blame me for your death. Ah, I forgot to mention. Actually, all of you are lining up to challenge me. I've been bored for a long time, especially with the weak ones who don't have much ability. Not only do I have to waste my energy to copy them, but I also can't learn anything from them. So, instead of that, why don't I choose the right person? I've been controlling the maze recently, sending some powerful magical beasts from the depths to the surface, hoping to reduce the number of people entering the maze. Regrettably, the effect is not immediately apparent. The original world transformation mirror was only an ordinary treasure, but it could accumulate thoughts from the person it duplicated because of its replicating characteristics. Over time, it became sentient. It had always been its mission to arrange trials for the challengers and selected talents. However, it seemed like it would complete that mission in its own way. The underground maze city has developed self-awareness. What kind of joke is this? We should just follow the rules of the past. Why do we have to change it so casually? Countless elites had challenged this place in the past. If we were to defeat their clones, wouldn't we die? The Holy Sword Adventurer team members had already had a taste of victory when they defeated their clones. At that moment, their expressions turned into despair. They had heard about the recent activities in the underground city, and many of the Holy Sword Adventurer team members had died. They thought those people were just unlucky, they did not expect the underground maze city had caused their deaths deliberately. Its goal was to kill them. Don't look at me like that. You've already taken a lot of things from me in the past few hundred years. Now it's my turn to ask you for something in return. Isn't that fair? You can go if you can defeat me. Don't worry, your strength is the best among the challengers in the past few hundred years. I have only 2 clones that can defeat you. Who are those 2 clones? One was from a guy named Frederick who challenged this place decades ago, and the other is a young man named Watson, who was just here today. What do you think? I'll relax my conditions a little. As long as you defeat either of them, I'll let you go. How about that? The clone's face lit up strangely as she waved her hand. Then, 2 figures emerged from the mist. One of them was a young man with yellow curly hair and an arrogant expression. He had a black and a white long sword crossed behind his back. The other person was a young man with a tender expression. He looked exactly the same as Watson. Choose one as your final challenge. Lady Sword Mistress, you should choose Watson. Although that young man is Master Antonio's disciple and has done a magnificent feat of pulling the maze out, his strength is unfathomable. However, the other clone is your father. No matter what you think, you'd have no chance of winning if you choose to challenge the Sword Saint. Before Christina could choose, her subordinates rushed forward to say, Watson is easier to defeat than the Sword Saint. Christina glanced at the 2 new clones in front of her. After she hesitated for a while, she said, No, I choose to challenge my father, Frederick. Chapter 315, Powerful Reinforcements. At the border, in an unknown location on the Dragonspine Snow Mountain, Nightingale panted as she shook the bloodstains from her platinum tier dagger. Sweat dripped down her lovely neck, dampening her attire. Thousands of Silver Moon demonic wolves' corpses fell beside her, as well as the bones of several moon-eating sky wolves. There seemed to be an endless supply of those magical beasts. Every time she killed one, more magical beasts would appear, including the moon-eating sky wolf. It was as if she had to face the fear in her heart repeatedly. Miss Nightingale, are you all right? The 3 people behind her did not look too good either. They were only at the peak of the gold tier. Even though they had a lot of Watson's knowledge in their mind, which made them peak gold tier elites, they still could not withstand the never-ending run-in with the magical beasts. Plus, their clones were watching the battle from the sidelines. I'm fine. Nightingale wiped the sweat off her forehead and pretended to be calm. She was not fine. The clones had not made a move, but the wolves led by the moon-eating sky wolf had made her very miserable. She could not fight against the moon-eating sky wolf at gold tier, but she had advanced to platinum tier. She was also part of the angel race and had mastered Watson's magic. Her strength had increased by 100 times, but the enemies she faced were also 100 times stronger. She was no longer afraid of the moon-eating sky wolf. She was only a little tired and worried about Watson. The enemies here are already so terrifying. I wonder how young Master Watson is doing. If it were possible, Nightingale desired to eliminate all foes in front of her to hurry to Watson's aid. It is unsurprising that for hundreds of years, only the Sword Saint had passed the challenge on the 100th floor. It is difficult for an ordinary individual to stand up against such a terrible army of magical beasts. Clyde could not stop himself from sighing, a tinge of regret visible on his features. If they had understood how difficult the trial would be, they would not have gone with Nightingale. They were quite likely to perish there. If only young Master Watson's trial could end quickly. He is not with us, and we don't know where he is now. However, with his ability, it should not be difficult to pass that trial. If he passes the trial, I hope he can come here to help us. These magical beasts are nothing to him. Annie immediately followed suit, waving her magic staff and casting the gold tier firewall spell to repel the few Silver Moon demonic wolves that attacked them. She had a lot of faith in Watson. His accomplishments during the last few days instilled in her a sense of power. Young Master Watson will come. We need to hold on until then. Nightingale comforted everyone. As she spoke, their clones suddenly moved. It was the curse of delay. First, Leon's clone cast a layer of curse on each of them to slow them down. Then, Leon cast the God's blessing spell on the other clones. A blessing of courage. The command of speed. A blessing of strength. A series of lights flashed. Nightingale's doppelganger led the clones as they rushed forward. The dagger in the clone's hand drew a beautiful arc, cutting through the air. At the same time, a chaos elemental law of domain appeared beneath her feet. The power corroded the ground into a trench dozens of meters long. Nightingale defended her 3 companions behind her from that attack. Additionally, she extended her hand and waved the dagger. 2 majestic waves of strength crashed on the ground to form a massive pit. There was no sound, yet that combat was more deadly than a brawl. Nightingale collided with her clone numerous times while surrounded by a chaos elemental combat aura. The clone's body swung slightly. On the other hand, the Nightingale was launched more than 10 meters into the air. There were numerous holes in her platinum tier armor, revealing her bloodied skin. A smear of blood dripped from the corner of her mouth. Although her clone looked identical to her, she could feel it as soon as she moved. The clone's fighting techniques appeared to encompass a wide variety of combat techniques. The clone was clearly significantly stronger than her. Miss Nightingale, those clones are too powerful. We are no match for them at all. Let's stop fighting and leave. Clyde had been forced to retreat by his own doppelganger. There were more than 10 sword wounds on his body. D****. The most difficult thing about those clones is not their strength, but that they can copy our weapons and armor. Arthur had also retreated. The man held the sky-hunting bow in his hand as he confronted his clone. His clone was not injured. Instead, there were 2 arrows condensed from combat aura stuck in his shoulders. They would only exhaust their physical strength in that battle. It was better to escape. Go. Remember, run toward Mount Creation. I'll stay behind to cover you. Nightingale decided with gritted teeth. Arthur immediately gave up resisting. A layer of dragon scales appeared on his body. He spread the phoenix wings on his back and flew rapidly toward Mount Creation. It was a partial beast transformation with his druid secret skill. He had borrowed his powers from the Diamond Stardust Dragon and Frost Phoenix that Watson had given him. That coward! Annie was cursed. Instead of walking away, she stepped toward Nightingale. Miss Nightingale, if you want to leave, we'll go together. Clyde and Leon did not speak as they fought against their clones. However, their expressions revealed that they had the same thought. You won't be of any use if you stay here with me. You might as well go to Mount Creation to get reinforcements. If I can't survive this, then so be it. Nightingale gave Annie a push and used the dagger in her other hand to block the clone's swift attack. She took 2 steps backward and spat out a mouthful of blood. Annie hesitated. Nightingale's words made sense. Leaving one person behind would significantly increase their chances of survival, but Nightingale's chances of dying would also rise. Furthermore, with such powerful enemies, she doubted whether the people from Mount Creation could help them. Just as she could not make up her mind, Arthur suddenly reappeared. Annie felt relieved. Miss Nightingale, I should not leave. Even the timid Arthur is back. I can't lose to him. You think I don't want to leave? D****, those clones fly much faster than me and escape faster than me. Arthur, who had just returned, deactivated his dragonification. 3 more arrows appeared on his shoulders. He grimaced in pain. Those guys look like us, and they have the same equipment. They are our clones, why are they so much stronger than us? The dragon scales and phoenix wings had also appeared on Arthur's clone. However, the dragon scales on his clone were not only from the Diamond Stardust Dragons, but there were also 3 pairs of phoenix wings on the clones' backs. The sheer magnitude of the clones crushed them. Everyone frowned when they heard Arthur's mocking voice, even in times of crisis. They thought that Arthur had a change of mind and rushed back to die with them. As expected, they were moved for nothing. While it was funny, everyone also felt despair in their hearts. They thought they could hold on for a little longer if they could escape, but it seemed like they would not be able to hold on for even another minute. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Silver moon demonic wolves emerged from the snow one after another. Those magical beasts were only silver tier, but they were also in large numbers. There were tens of thousands of them. Even platinum tier elites would be intimidated by the sheer numbers. Furthermore, they still had to deal with their clones and the moon-eating sky wolves. It seemed that death had become their inevitable outcome. Roar! Even Nightingale subconsciously dropped the dagger in her hand and gave up resisting. Suddenly, a terrifying dragon's roar came from the sky. A vast shadow blocked the sunlight and cast a shadow on the ground. Then, a huge flaming meteor fell from the sky and landed in front of Nightingale and the others. The meteor was hundreds of meters long. Before the terrifying power of the meteor fell, the magical beasts crouched on the ground in terror. Then, the meteor landed on the ground and created a bottomless pit in the ground. The earth had melted, and water surged in all directions like a tide. The silver moon demonic wolves were blasted into a sieve by the drifting sand, not to mention the center of the meteor. The magical beasts hit were immediately vaporized. Roar! Immediately after the dragon's roar, the cry of a phoenix echoed from the sky. Suddenly, white sparks bloomed on the ground. The clones had turned into ice sculptures, and the solid ice had spread to the ground. What's going on? Annie raised her head in disbelief when she saw a scene that she would never forget for the rest of her life. She saw a giant dragon and a phoenix soaring in the clouds in the sky with tens of thousands of holy beings behind them. Those beings had halos on their heads and wings on their backs. Chapter 316, Forced to End. Angels. They are angels from the powerful ancient race, nicknamed servants of the gods. Praise the gods, no, praise the great young Master Watson, we are saved. Leon shouted as he opened his arms and knelt humbly on the ground when he saw the tens of thousands of beings hovering in the sky. Arthur, who was beside him, was not so excited. He only stared at the dragon and the phoenix in the sky, then looked at the diamond-shaped scales on his body and the pure white wings of the phoenix. He seemed uncertain. The angel species? Haven't they been extinct since ancient times? How can there be so many of them? And why do I feel so familiar with the dragon and phoenix in the sky? These angels, the dragon, and the phoenix came from the direction of Mount Creation that Miss Nightingale had mentioned. Could it be? Annie stared at the distant sky as a bold guess emerged in her heart. Just as everyone was contemplating their own ideas, a handsome middle-aged man dressed in black armor and with short sky-blue hair descended from the tens of thousands of creatures hovering in the sky. He radiated the angel species' fabled aura and the dignity of a platinum-tier elite. Mount Creation's commander of Black Moon Iron Knight's 1st Legion is here to escort you, Miss Nightingale. By the way, didn't you follow young Master Watson to the royal city? Why are you here? And who are the 3 people beside you? It was Alan. He had felt a violent fluctuation from the direction of Dragonspine Snow Mountain from Mount Creation. It had felt like a battle, and he was worried that it had been someone like Moriarty. Therefore, he hurriedly led a few legions to check it out. He had not expected to find Nightingale. I was on my way to the royal city with young Master Watson. Currently, we are at the city of Steel, the nearest city to the border. As for why I am here and who are the people next to me, it's a long story. Nightingale looked at the shocked faces of the people around her calmly. She was relieved. Since the people from Mount Creation had arrived, they would no longer be in any danger. No matter how powerful the clones and magical beasts were, the tens of thousands of knights would crush them. Just as she had expected, the nearby 4 frozen clones began to tremble before the ice that covered their bodies shattered. 4 bodies crawled forward and began to attack them again. Fire elements that flow in this world. Transform into an unquenchable holy flame and purify all evil in this world. Before the clones could make their move, a chant echoed from the sky. Then an angel with 6 flaming wings dropped from the sky with thousands of people behind her. They attacked at the same time, and the rolling flames ignited the sky. The sky appeared to have transformed into a sea of fire, mirroring the red land. The snowflakes on the ground swiftly melted, revealing the stony terrain. The clones wailed in response to such a powerful attack. The flames had charred their bodies, and they fled in haste. The silver moon demonic wolves that came from the depths of the earth growled as well before they ran into the distance. Vice Commander of the 1st Legion, the Red Angel Elvira, is here to greet Miss Nightingale. Elvira dropped from the heavens after demonstrating her swordsmanship, her beautiful red hair blowing in the breeze. She appeared gallant and valiant with the 1st Legion members behind her. More people landed on the ground. Commander of the 2nd Legion, List, and Vice Commander Anna, greets Miss Nightingale. Commander of the 3rd Legion, William, and Vice Commander Ron, greets Miss Nightingale. We haven't seen each other for a long time, Miss Nightingale. The Black Moon Knights who came to their rescue were from the first 3 legions. That was not even the Knights' full strength, as they had about 100,000 Knights on Mount Creation. Each legion would have about 10,000 Knights. Alan only dispatched the first 3 teams because he knew that they were sufficient to solve any problems they might have. Powerful angels continued to descend from the sky, one after another. The scene when they greeted Nightingale shocked her companions. At the same time, the clones burned by the fire and the magical beasts that crawled out from the ground gradually disappeared after they glared at the Black Moon Knights in anger. They turned into a wisp of green smoke that quickly dissipated. Then, a loud heavenly voice echoed in the world. Due to external interference, this assessment has been forced to end. Brave adventurers, please come back to challenge me again when you are ready. Again? I will never enter the 100th floor again. Arthur sat down on the ground and breathed a sigh of relief. He began to pull the arrows in his shoulder as he continued to swear. Miss Nightingale, now that the problem has been solved, we have plenty of time. You can tell us in detail what happened in the City of Steel. Alan glanced at Arthur, his face full of curiosity. Did young Master Watson make any thrilling feats when he went to the City of Steel? Judging from the current situation, young Master Watson must have caused quite a stir, Elvira said. She looked a little emotional, and the people behind her looked expectant and excited. It had only been a few days since Watson went to the City of Steel, and more than a month had passed on Mount Creation. They missed Watson, so they were eager to know about him. Before I explain, Annie, introduce yourself to everyone. Nightingale nodded at Annie. She immediately stood up nervously, rubbed her hands, and looked at Alan. Hello, my lord, leader of Mount Creation. My name is Annie, and I'm young Master Watson's adventurer companion in the City of Steel. Don't be deceived by my appearance. My dream is to become a maid and enter the service industry. Although I'm a little weak, I'll work hard. The more she spoke, the quieter her voice shifted. She had planned to go to the border to work as a maid in Watson's manor, but that plan had been shattered. The angels had appeared before her. It was hard to imagine how many such creatures were there on Mount Creation. She was only an insignificant gold-tier adventurer. How could she have the qualifications to be associated with those powerful existences? My name is Leon, and I am young Master Watson's humble servant. I didn't expect that the distinguished angels would be soldiers from the mountain. According to Miss Nightingale, Watson had created the mountain, which means that young Master Watson is your master. Then, isn't he a real god? Leon maintained his kneeling posture with a fanatical look on his face. Praise the great Master Watson, who had shone like the sun on me. It's great to be able to believe in the great Master Watson. From now on, I will double my efforts in believing in the great Master Watson and spread his faith for him. Previously, he had abandoned his faith altogether in favor of Watson's ability to provide him with additional benefits. However, he had seen the angels. He truly believed that Watson was like a god at that point. Miss Nightingale, it seems like the companions that young Master Watson has met in the City of Steel are quite special. Alan wore an odd expression on his face. Nightingale covered her lips with her hand and coughed lightly, changing the subject. These are not important. Let me tell you what young Master Watson has been doing recently and why we are here. Chapter 317, The second person to clear the level. Boom. Boom. The wind whistled, and the sound of blades colliding rose and fell. The stairway temple had become a sea of sword chi. The 200 Holy Sword Adventurer team members hid far away as they watched the battle between Christina and the Sword Saint clone. Who do you think will win the battle between Lady Sword Mistress and the Sword Saint's clone? A member of the Adventurer team asked in a low voice with a nervous expression. A person next to him shook his head, his expression was similarly unsightly. Even though Lady Sword Mistress's talent is outstanding, that is the Sword Saint's projection. He did not become the number one person in the Holy Dragon Kingdom for hundreds of years for nothing. It has been almost an hour since the battle started, and Lady Sword Mistress has been at a disadvantage for the whole duration. I think that it won't be long before she is defeated. On the stairs, hundreds of meters away from them, Christina was battling with the yellow-haired young Sword Saint, Reed. Christina had lost the sky-severing blade, so she was using an ordinary silver-tier longsword. However, her opponent was using a black and white peak gold-tier weapon. Those black and white swords were also very famous in the kingdom's history. It had accompanied Reed for many years. Its name was the Holy Swords of Light and Darkness. When the Holy Sword of Light slashed out, half of the temple turned into day, and when the Holy Sword of Darkness slashed out, the other half of the temple turned into night. A thick black fog filled the air, corroding the sturdy stairs. As the strongest person in the kingdom, the Sword Saint used both light and darkness elemental combat auras. That was also the foundation for him to become the number one elite in the kingdom. Christina only inherited the talent of cultivating the light elemental combat aura. Christina pursed her lips and faced the light and darkness elemental combat auras. She cried out bitterly in her heart. The thin sword in her hand had many cracks. A silver-tier weapon was ultimately unable to withstand an attack of a platinum-tier elite. It shattered into pieces after it withstood dozens of attacks. Quickly! Prepare a new weapon for me. Christina took the opportunity to increase the distance between them before she called out to a member, who immediately drew the weapon on his waist and threw it into her hand. Then, Christina continued to fight against the Sword Saint's clone. A light elemental domain appeared beneath her feet, and blades of light rose into the air and danced in front of her. Peak Platinum Tier Battle Technique, Triple Infinite Sword Slash. Then, each of the light blades in front of her split into 3 identical weapons. They formed a spiral shape and entangled with each other as they rose into the air. Following that, they fell like meteors, striking the ground beneath Reed's feet without any distinction. The blades collided with the ground, leaving a series of meandering cracks behind. Gravel flew everywhere. The power of each blade was no less than that of a small meteorite. That move was a technique that Christina had optimized after her battle with Watson. Compared to the infinite sword slash that she had used previously, that move could unleash 3 times the power. However, the opponent she faced could resolve such a powerful move easily. Aurora. The Reed clone stretched his right hand behind his back and grabbed the hilt of the Holy Sword of Light. He unsheathed half of the sword's blade. The light flashed and disappeared. An extreme ray of light appeared before him and pierced through the layers of light that Christina had released. It shattered them into pieces, and the entire temple lit up. His action had been too quick, so everyone could only see a part of Reed's action when he unsheathed the sword. Some people even thought that Reed did not even draw his sword at all. Eternal Night. Immediately after that, the Reed clone placed his hand on the other holy sword and drew it. He slashed at the air. If the Aurora method was a straight line that stretched endlessly, then the Eternal Night was a circle covering a large area. As the sword fell, a thick black fog spread and turned everything in sight into darkness. Even the temple was dyed black. After that, a large part of the sturdy temple and the massive stone pillars that were a few hundred meters tall had disappeared. No matter what kind of attack Christina released, Reed's response would always be one sword, but his one sword was better than countless swords. Miss Christina, please continue to work hard to advance further in your progress. Your current state is far from a match for the Sword Saint's projection. I have a small question. I don't know if you can answer it for me. It is obvious that you know how powerful Sword Saint Reed is, so why didn't you choose Watson's projection as your opponent instead? At that moment, Christina's clone had turned into a white-robed girl. The girl's face was as smooth as a mirror. There were no facial features on her face. All that was left was a swirling vortex. That was the true appearance of the self-consciousness that was born from the world transformation mirror. Christina continued to retreat as she gritted her teeth. Because to me, that is the best solution. If the projection in front of her was not the Sword Saint from decades ago, but her father, then she would have definitely chosen Watson's projection. After all, as Reed's daughter, she knew better than anyone else how powerful her father was. However, the clone in front of her was based on her father from decades ago. She thought that the younger version of her father should not be as strong as Watson. There was no reason for her to make such a choice. She only felt that way after the battle with Watson a few days ago. Even her father could not have become a platinum tier elite at 12 or 13 years old. Just from that point alone, she thought that Watson was a monster. Plus, Watson still had some things that she had not understood. Since she wanted to win, she might as well choose a familiar opponent that she could beat. Miss Christina, I can't comment on your choice, but I have to say that it's not a good one, the World Transformation Mirror girl said. Her words immediately ignited the emotions of some Holy Sword Adventurer team members. See, I told you Lady Sword Mistress should have chosen to fight Watson, but in the end, she insisted on choosing the Sword Saint. If she had chosen Watson, she would have won a long time ago. I don't know why Lady Sword Mistress is always fond of that young man. Not only did she want to bring him with her when exploring the dungeon, but she even avoided him in battles. Is it because he is Master Antonio's disciple? Watson is Antonio's disciple, and the Sword Saint is an elite on par with Antonio. From that point alone, we know to choose the child. Lady Sword Mistress is too rash. I wonder if we still have a chance to make a new choice. Dissatisfaction filled the Holy Sword Adventurer team. After all, their lives had been entrusted to the Sword Mistress. However, Christina had made such a reckless move. Naturally, they felt uncomfortable about it. While they were complaining, the battle situation had changed. Reed suddenly pulled out the two holy swords on his back at the same time. The two blades collided in front of him. Suddenly, a violent explosion erupted. The strongest combat technique at the peak of Platinum Tier, light and darkness reincarnation. Light and darkness were perfectly fused at that moment, and it created an incomparable power. All the stone pillars in the surrounding area broke, and the entire temple collapsed. It gave people the illusion that they were about to fall from the sky to the ground. Boom! Even the Holy Sword Adventurer team members who were quite far away were blown away in the face of that dreadful explosion. They fell to the ground, their faces covered in dust. Christina, who was at the epicenter of the blast, was covered in blood. Her clothing had been torn to shreds. The Reed clone appeared in front of her, half crouching on the ground. He clasped his two swords around her neck. I'm sorry, Miss Christina. You've lost. From now on, you, your subordinates, and everyone's thoughts will belong to me. The World Transformation Mirror girl clapped her hands and said that in a relaxed tone. It's over. It's all Lady Sword Mistress' fault for choosing the Sword Saint. We're all going to die with her. The Holy Sword Adventurer team members climbed up from the ground. Their faces were pale and filled with despair. I just want to ask. Christina raised her head with difficulty and stared at the girl in the distance. You said that my father's clone was the wrong choice. What about Watson? Would he have been a good choice? How should I put it? That would be the worst choice, the girl replied after hesitating for a moment. I see. It seems like I did not make the wrong choice then. Christina closed her eyes and waited for death. She had done everything right, her conscience was clear. She had done her best. In that situation, she was still not a match for any of the clones. She could only face death. After a few seconds, the intense pain that she had imagined did not come. Instead, a familiar young voice sounded behind her. What? I have passed the trial. Why hasn't this arcane realm disappeared? Furthermore, why are so many of you here? Are you holding some secret meeting? Why is it so lively here? Chapter 318, Insta-killing the Sword Saint's clone. Watson? Christina turned her head and realized that the person who had appeared behind her was Watson. She was confused. Why are you in my trial? And you said that you had cleared it. What's going on? After being stunned for a few seconds, Christina snapped back to her senses and asked in surprise. Just what I said. I just defeated my own clone. I thought I would be able to leave this area and get a reward. I did not expect to enter another dimension. Watson explained as he looked around. He could not help but click his tongue when he saw the collapsed temple and the 200 Holy Sword Adventurer team members huddled together. He had entered the 100th floor of the maze by himself. However, Christina had brought so many people with her. It was likely that she was cheating. After he looked around the area, his gaze fell on the Sword Saint clone, who was pointing his sword at Christina's neck. Miss Christina, it seems like you have encountered a small problem. Do you need me to help you solve it? Christina pointed at the sword on her neck and laughed self-deprecatingly. What can you do to help me in this situation? That kid doesn't understand the situation. Lady Sword Mistress' opponent is the Sword Saint, yet he dares to boast that he can help. Even if he is Master Antonio's disciple and is powerful, he is definitely not a match for the Sword Saint's clone. He had cleared the dungeon, yet he is here. He can only blame his bad luck. Before Christina could reply, the Holy Sword Adventurer team members had already spoken. Even though they did not like Watson, they did feel sorry for him. Watson could have been the second person to have cleared the dungeon, but he was about to die there. Sword Saint? So that's the Sword Saint's projection in front of me? He doesn't look that strong. Watson began to observe the yellow-haired man in front of him and the black and white long sword on his back. He had long heard of the Sword Saint. His master had said he should be the Sword Saint disciple when they reached the royal city. Antonio wanted Watson to learn swordsmanship from the Sword Saint. Sylvan had also said that the Sword Saint was the #1 elite in the Holy Dragon Kingdom. Even Antonio, who had advanced to Diamond Tier, could not withstand 3 strikes from the swordsman. The Sword Saint clone looked very young, and there was an unconcealable pride on his face. It was clear that it was the Sword Saint's younger self. Does that kid think that he's invincible after clearing the dungeon? He said that the Sword Saint's clone doesn't look very strong. I think he'll last long. The adventurer team member who had just spoken sighed. Then, another person said, when I saw the youth forcefully pull the underground city out of the ground, I thought that he was very strong. At the very least, he wouldn't be weaker than Lady Sword Mistress. But now, it seems like that was only a facade. He can't even tell how strong the Sword Saint is. Perhaps the reason he survived the underground city was that the clone was too weak. Everyone knew about the Sword Saint's strength. When Christina had fought him, the Sword Saint clone had only attacked her casually, and Christina could not even retaliate against that. She was almost killed when the clone used a powerful sword technique, the Light and Darkness Reincarnation. Watson, this is my trial. It has nothing to do with you. Think of a way to leave. While Watson was speaking, Christina pushed the sword away from her neck and stood up shakily. She wiped the blood from the corners of her mouth. After all, he was part of the world transformation mirror, he was only wearing her father's skin. She knew that her father was powerful, but he was not invincible when he was young. The clone was strong because the world transformation mirror had absorbed the experiences of different cultivators over the past hundreds of years into his body. Under such circumstances, even Watson might not be a match for him. Since Miss Christina has chosen to continue, I'll let the clone continue to move. I can see how tired you are, you should just give up. The world transformation mirror girl clapped her hands in the distance. As for Mr. Watson, as the second person to clear the trial in decades, I'll send you off and give you a reward later. The strongest combat technique at the peak of Platinum Tier, Light and Darkness Reincarnation. The clone drew 2 long swords from his back and unleashed the same move on Christina. However, the attack was much more powerful than the previous one. Light and darkness occupied the entire temple before it was split into 2. One half was daytime, and the blazing light was enough to melt anyone there. On the other side was eternal darkness. Anyone who entered it would be devoured. The Holy Sword Adventurer team members, who initially stood quite far away, were not spared. Regardless of whether they were silver tier or gold tier, those who stood on the bright side evaporated, and their armor melted with them. Those who were in the darkness zone had vanished without a trace. It was not only the temple, it was as if the entire space was about to be divided into 2. That's not good. Everyone, run! No one knew who had cried out in alarm, but no matter where they ran to, light and darkness continued to alternate around them. It was as if they were trapped in a vast cage that engulfed everyone and filled everyone's faces with the sorrow of death. Absolute reflex. Suddenly, Watson's voice resounded throughout the entire temple, echoing in everyone's ears. Suddenly, the light and darkness that had enveloped the entire stairway temple had disappeared, and everything returned to its peaceful state. Miss Christina, even though we have a lot of conflicts, we're here together. At least, let me save you before you leave. Watson took a step forward and stood in front of Christina. A halo that symbolized an angel appeared above his head, and an illusory mirror appeared on his body. The light and darkness reincarnation released by the Sword Saint clone had collided with the mirror. Suddenly, it twisted and returned at an even faster speed. It landed directly on the clone, causing cracks to appear on his body. Absolute destruction. Watson pointed his finger again, aiming at the spot between the clone's eyebrows. With a crisp crack, the clone's body shattered like fragile porcelain. Watson had fused the absolute destruction spell when he fought against his clone. He had mastered more than 40 diamond tier rules, which were created by fusing many platinum tier spells. Each rule was extraordinary. During his battle with his clone, he had fused those rules again, resulting in him learning dozens of brand new rules. Absolute destruction was one of them. No matter what object or creature was in front of him, Watson could use the absolute destruction spell to destroy it. It was a tremendous accomplishment to be able to defeat the clone's freshly fused diamond tier rules. After all, regardless of how quickly the clone replicated his memories, it would still be slower than his system's fusion rate. You are quite prepared to meddle in other people's affairs. Christina pursed her lips after a lengthy stare at the teenager in front of her. Her face relaxed slightly, and a glimmer of surprise emerged in her eyes. Her father's clone was a formidable opponent who could not be defeated even if she battled him with all her might. Yet, Watson had destroyed the clone easily. Did that youth kill the Sword Saint's clone? Did I see it right? The Holy Sword Adventurer team members, who had been running away, looked back in disbelief when they saw Watson's actions and the dregs on the ground. Mr. Watson, you could have left, but you chose to stay. Are you trying to provoke me? The vortex on the world transformation mirror girl's face was covered with a layer of frost. You'd have to pay the price for that. Swish, swish. However, as soon as she finished speaking, a succession of piercing sounds erupted from the stairway temple. Human figures emerged from the dense fog, men, women, old and young. They wore clothes from different eras, and there were countless of them. The densely packed human figures occupied all the space in the surroundings, and all of them were eyeing Watson covetously. Chapter 319, Fusing with the Einherjar's Body. These individuals have gathered to confront the underground city. Their strengths range from bronze and silver tier warriors to gold and platinum tier elites. I am curious as to how many of them there are. I think there are at least 1 million of them. Christina's lips trembled as she stared at the numerous clones that occupied the entire stairway temple and were barely able to fit in the air. She had underestimated the trial on the maze's 100th floor. That was the true strength of the World Transformation Mirror. As a diamond tier item, it had evolved in the underground city's unique environment for hundreds of years. The energy it obtained had already far exceeded the range of a regular diamond tier item. World Transformation Mirror, didn't you say that you would let us go as long as I defeated my father's clone? Are you planning to go back on your word? It was impossible to fight in such circumstances. Logic and emotion might be their way out. Miss Christina, of course, I'm not that kind of person. But I said that I would let you go if you killed the Sword Saint's clone. Did you do it? The clone defeated you, and Watson was the one who killed it. So, you didn't complete the trial. Instead, you were the one who destroyed the sacred trial repeatedly. It wouldn't be strange for me to punish you, right? Christina did not care about what the World Transformation Mirror had meant. She sighed and spread the light domain beneath her feet. A light weapon that was very similar to the sky-severing blade appeared in her hand. Watson, I'm sorry. It seems that it will be tough for us to walk out of here today. If I had known that the maze had developed self-awareness over the past few hundred years and that the trial would become like this, I wouldn't have come in here. I even implicated my team members because of this. That is my negligence as a leader. At that point, Christina's eyes dimmed, and she sounded as if she were ashamed. However, her expression quickly became firm. Saying all that now is useless. If I have to die, then I choose to die standing. I will fight until my very last moment. Even if I were to die, I would have no regrets. Lady Sword Mistress is right. It's better to fight those clones. A Holy Sword Adventurer team member was running away when he heard Christina's words. He gritted his teeth and turned around, his eyes burned with flames. The clones had occupied the space, so where would they go if they were to run away? They might as well give it their all and sacrifice themselves heroically like warriors. They no longer blame Watson for the situation that had developed. In any case, they would still be killed even if Watson did not anger the World Transformation Mirror. The only difference was whether one or many clones would kill them. At the very least, they would be able to die a quicker death. I'm also willing to fight to the death with you, Lady Sword Mistress. Even if I were to die, I would have no regrets. Fight! 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 More Holy Sword Adventurer team members had gathered and surrounded Christina. They used their swords to hit their shields to make a rumbling sound, and they used that sound to raise their courage. You still have the courage to resist. I have to give you credit for that. You are all courageous adventurers. Therefore, I will give you a dignified death. The World Transformation Mirror girl sat cross-legged in the sky and laughed softly. Then, she waved her hand, and the clones in the sky launched an attack simultaneously. Combat auras and magic flickered, and the sky lit up with millions of light spots in an instant. It was as if there were stars all over the sky. However, those lights were not only beautiful, but they also contained destructive killing intent. Under the brilliance of millions of combat aura and magical light, the protective barrier created by the less than 200 Holy Sword Adventurer team members was as insignificant as a firefly in comparison to the sun and moon in the sky. There was no correlation at all. There was a proverb in the Holy Dragon Kingdom: more ants can kill an elephant. It was similar to the situation that Watson and the others were facing. Furthermore, they were not facing ants, but elephants of the same level as them. System fusion, activate. When everyone thought that they would melt in the light that filled the sky, Watson made his move. Crack! Crack! Numerous cracking noises emanated from the sky. The gold-tier adventurer's projection closest to him was the first to break, transforming into a ray of light. Then, when the other clones in his immediate vicinity became infected and shattered one by one, beams of light flew into the sky and gradually converged into a massive ball of light. Initially, more than 1 million clones were floating in the sky. However, those clones and their attacks had vanished at that point. They converged into a human-shaped body radiating light in a matter of seconds. Pieces of light in the shape of armor hovered on that body. There were countless arms made of light that was faintly discernible behind its shoulder. Around the arms were eyeballs that emitted light as they opened and closed. Congratulations, Master, on fusing a large number of clones. You have obtained a Diamond Tier special item, the Einherjar's body. Diamond Tier special item, the Einherjar's body. Effect: this item is made of the memories from a large number of cultivators. It contains the abilities of more than 1 million cultivators. After absorbing this body, you can obtain all its skills in your memories. Abilities: omniscient nature, can master various skills of various professions. Instant learning, you can learn any skill at once. 1,000-armed giant, can split into thousands of arms, each of which can deal platinum tier damage. 100-eyed giant, can generate hundreds of eyes, each of which can emit destructive platinum tier magical light pillars. Additional ability: 10,000 clones, can use energy to create your own clone, but the clone will only have half of your original abilities. Master, would you like to merge with the Einherjar body now? Of course. Watson answered without hesitation. In an instant, the glowing humanoid body floating in the sky fell and entered his body through his forehead. As the Einherjar body merged with his body, Watson felt a countless amount of knowledge that did not belong to him appear in his mind. That knowledge was the culmination of countless adventurers' painstaking efforts over hundreds of years. However, at that moment, all of them had become part of his abilities. The accumulation of hundreds of years on his body had caused Watson's temperament to change in an instant. At first, he resembled a reserved divine sword. He was harmless when unsheathed, but he had changed. Even if he concealed it deliberately, a terrible aura that had been tempered thousands of times continued to emanate from his body. It appeared as though he required only a glance to dissolve existences that had yet to reach gold tier. Watson felt as if he was only one step away from the diamond tier with the additional knowledge. He had initially bridged only 1/10 of the distance between platinum and diamond tier. It seemed like he had crossed the 8 or 9/10 mark. It was not only that, but his comprehension of fighting techniques and magic had improved significantly. Previously, as a fighter, his talents were barely at platinum tier. He felt confident that he could defeat any of the kingdom's grandmasters in both fist and sword methods. In addition to the abilities of warriors and mages, he had also mastered the priests' and archers' skills. Those clones had even brought him many memories of potion making, cooking, tailoring, and other aspects of life. Watson had gained abilities from the 4 classes and also a variety of life skills. That was the strength of Einherjar's body. All of **Mned clones, die. While Watson was absorbing the knowledge gained from the Einherjar's body, a Holy Sword Adventurer team member was waving wildly in the sky with his eyes closed as if he could dispel the fear in his heart. However, after waving for a while, he suddenly felt that the surrounding environment was too quiet. So, he opened his eyes. Then, he realized that all the clones that had filled the sky only a few seconds ago had disappeared. His companions stared at him as if they were looking at a fool. The clones have all been destroyed. Please open your eyes when you fight next time. Just as he was feeling puzzled, he heard his companions sigh with a trembling sound. He destroyed millions of clones in one strike. He's not human. It seemed like the Holy Sword Adventurer team had a misconception about Watson's strength before that. Even after they learned that Watson was Antonio's disciple, their confusion had persisted. Then, they discovered Watson could kill the Sword Saint clone in a single strike, and he had also slaughtered countless clones so carelessly. Only then did they understand why Antonio, who had been living in seclusion for years, would travel all the way to the border to recruit Watson. If they were Antonio and knew that the youth had such a monstrous talent, they would have made the same choice as well. Watson was not a human at all, he was a monster. Chapter 320, Did you create this dragon as well? Why is there still one in the sky that hasn't been fused? Watson looked up at the sky and realized that the clones had disappeared, but the world transformation mirror girl was still there. As he muttered to himself, he stretched his right hand toward the sky. His exploration of the underground maze had been fruitful as he had managed to obtain such a powerful ability like the Einherjar's body. As for the trial reward that the world transformation mirror had mentioned, he no longer cared about it. He might as well fuse the world transformation mirror. However, before he could activate the system, the world transformation mirror girl suddenly flew down from the sky and landed in front of him. Christina and the Holy Sword Adventurer team members were nervous, they did not know what the world transformation mirror would do next. Plop! Suddenly, the world transformation mirror girl dropped to her knees in front of Watson. Respected Master Watson, not only did you pass the trial, but you also broke my punishment. Your strength is truly extraordinary. I have decided to offer myself to you as a reward. From now on, I belong to you. What? Everyone was in disbelief when they heard that. They knew that they would receive a substantial reward when they cleared the trial, but they had not anticipated that the award would be the World Transformation Mirror. It made no sense. Watson was not the first person to clear it. If that were the reward, the Sword Saint would have received the World Transformation Mirror decades ago after clearing the trial. The World Transformation Mirror girl was still kneeling. The vortex on her face spun slowly. If she had any facial features, the expression on her face at that time would undoubtedly be nasty. She also felt very helpless. Watson had destroyed years of accumulated knowledge with a single strike. Initially, those clones were part of her knowledge, but she had completely forgotten about them. It was as if the experience she had accumulated had become a part of Watson. As a diamond tier item that had existed for hundreds of years, she had never seen such a method. Even the Sword Saint who had defeated her decades ago could only suppress her strength but did not affect her at all. Losing hundreds of years of accumulation was unsettling, but she did not wish to die. She had a feeling that if she did not beg for mercy, she would end up in a terrible state. Watson's face lit up when he heard the World Transformation Mirror's words. He was on the verge of fusing the mirror, but he had not anticipated the other side taking the initiative to acknowledge him as its master. What use are you to me? Why should I accept you? Watson had never had a favorable opinion of a sentient tool. He even had the pen of truth to serve as an example. What? Christina's lips twitched. If she could, she would interrupt Watson. It was already remarkable that the World Transformation Mirror had acknowledged him as its master. She did not expect Watson to reject it. It was a diamond tier item, and it was not something an ordinary person would refuse. Honorable Master Watson, the reason I stayed in the underground city and arranged trials for others is to wait for a suitable master. It's a pity that the people I have met over the years have not been able to satisfy me until I saw you. Your brilliance is like the sun and the moon in the sky. You are stronger than any other person in the world. A glance at your appearance caused me to be deeply intoxicated. There are as many reasons as you would like, but first, let me introduce my advantage. The Holy Sword Adventurer team members stared at the World Transformation Mirror girl, who said unhurriedly, I'm very useful. First of all, I can clone anyone below diamond tier. I use it to train my subordinates. At the same time, I can also teleport you to any place on the continent. You won't have to worry about getting lost when you venture outside, and you don't have to consider the distance of the journey. Isn't that convenient? If the World Transformation Mirror had not stated her purpose in front of everyone, they would have assumed that was what she thought. The world transformation mirror is a simp. Everyone else had the same thought, but they could understand why she would behave like that. They would certainly do the same if they were the world transformation mirror, especially after witnessing Watson destroy millions of clones. You have a point. All right, I'll accept you, albeit reluctantly. But before that, we have to sign a contract. Watson stretched his hand outward and wrote a contract in the Lwen language in midair. That was a priest's skill that he had obtained from the many skills contained within the Einherjar's body. It was called the Soul Contract. Platinum tier special skill, Soul Contract. Effect: once both parties sign a contract, they can't violate it. Otherwise, they will suffer the consequences, their souls will be extinguished. The contract is effective regardless of the signee's strength. While Watson was writing the contract, its relevant content automatically flashed through his mind. Master Watson, I am willing to sign a contract with you. The World Transformation Mirror girl hesitated for a moment before she reached out her right hand. A drop of bright red blood dripped from her fingertip and fused with the contract. Watson also pricked his fingertip and let the blood dribble onto the contract. The contract suddenly turned deep crimson after being drenched by the two streams of blood. Its light blazed brightly and gradually deteriorated into two jets of crimson air. One entered Watson's body, while the other entered the World Transformation Mirror. Watson felt a connection to the World Transformation Mirror after the contract was created. He could command the World Transformation Mirror to perform any task he desired. Simultaneously, the World Transformation Mirror's appearance had changed too. Its initial appearance was a vortex-shaped fog. Once the fog cleared, it revealed exquisite facial features that were strikingly identical to those of Watson. However, its face's outline was much more delicate. A tool that recognized its master would exhibit some of its master's qualities. As a result, the World Transformation Mirror gained a face and was closer to Watson. Since you have acknowledged me as your master, I should give you a name. You were originally a mirror, so why don't I call you Little Mirror? My honorable master, your brilliance dazzles me. I should not refuse the name you gave me, but that name is really, well, may I ask for a new one? Then let's call you Little White. Master, don't you think that's a dog's name? Watson was in a dilemma. He knew that he did not have any talent in naming anything. Then, after a moment of hesitation, he said, since your main body is the World Transformation Mirror, why don't I call you Globe? The world is the 24th tarot card, which happens to be the name of the 22nd card. It's quite meaningful. That is not a bad name. Thank you, Master. Obviously, he liked his new name. The World Transformation Mirror looked happy. Watson turned around after resolving the situation with the World Transformation Mirror. He discovered that everyone, including Christina, was staring at him as if he were a monster. It left him perplexed. Why are you looking at me like that? Watson, are you not aware of what you've done? Christina flashed a self-deprecating grin as she shook her head. I can't believe that despite years of diligent preparation, I have ultimately failed. Watson, you saved us, and I owe you. Miss Christina, you are far too humble. It is only a small matter. Since the trial has ended, let's get out of here. Watson looked at Globe, and she immediately nodded in agreement. With a wave of her hand, the stairwell temple in which everyone was standing vanished. The surrounding environment was restored to the appearance of the 100th floor. The only change was that the World Transformation Mirror in the center of the underground city had vanished. It had been transformed into the girl beside Watson. Phew! We're finally back. The Holy Sword Adventurer team members were just about to heave a sigh of relief when a huge black shadow streaked across their heads, accompanied by an intense dragon's roar. Roar! Everyone looked up and saw a black dragon dozens of meters long circling above their heads. The ferocious dragon's head looked down at them, and its vertical pupils did not contain a hint of emotion. It was the same black dragon they saw in the sky before they entered the underground city. They did not expect to encounter such a terrifying magical beast after passing the trial. They were terrified. Death Omen Star Dragon, when did you get here? I created you to focus on the maze. Come here, quickly. I have just named the World Transformation Mirror. It's your turn now. Watson beckoned to the sky, and the black dragon immediately shrank to the length of an arm. It landed on his shoulder and rubbed its head against him intimately. No way, Watson. You created a dragon too. When the Holy Sword Adventurer team members saw that scene, their mouths were opened so wide that they could fit an egg in it. They were frozen on the spot.